Every health professional I've talked to is balancing life inside of medicine and life outside of medicine, and they affect each other. Every single person, and some of the stress points might show up in how we show up in presence in medicine, and sometimes the stresses of medicine will show up in how we show up and presence ourselves, our being outside of medicine within other relationships. So that topic, whether it's with a partner, a child, family members, is always coming up. Of how do I be a great group member at work, but not at the cost and expense of losing important things that are important to me and my family.
Welcome to Flourishing in Medicine, from Surviving to Thriving. I'm your host, Dr. Mick Krasner. This podcast is produced by EmPro, a medical professional liability company in New York State. EmPro is committed through educational activities and peer support activities to help the physicians they insure. Today, I'm joined by Dr. James Juarez, an emergency physician, educator, and founder of Oasis Adventures, an organization dedicated to fostering personal and professional growth through immersive retreat experiences. In this really enjoyable conversation, James reflects on how nature, retreat, community, and deep listening have shaped his path in medicine and helped him transform clinical work into a practice of presence, kindness, and understanding. Through his work with Oasis, he invites clinicians to slow down, reconnect with their values, and give themselves permission to live the fullness of their lives. And now my conversation with Dr. James Juarez. Welcome, James.
Mick, it's great to be here. Good to see you again.
To explore a little bit about why medicine, what's the origin story, we could say, what first drew you into medicine, what particular experiences you had or kind of life you had that moved you in that direction?
Well, I'm in emergency medicine, and I've wanted to be a doctor since 8 years old. And emergency medicine is kind of the opposite of life, where things are slow and unfolding, and things take time and iteration. And emergency medicine, I liked because I wanted immediate, quick, solvable problems. And a lot of life is not like that. And so, knowing that about myself, I became an EMT in college, loved the helicopter, loved being on scene. So I was drawn to emergency medicine, the action, and then I was off to the races in medical school, joined the emergency medicine club, and kind of been on the emergency medicine path almost from the word go. I considered, family medicine, and actually that was about it. Emergency medicine, family medicine. But when I thought about immediacy, solving problems, emergency medicine was the easy win.
So I'm wondering if we could just explore that part a little bit further. You said at 8 years old, you knew you wanted to be a physician, and then at some point you realized you like the immediacy of things. So I'm kind of more interested in not the path and the things you did instrumentally to get there, but what was it about you that made first being a physician important at the age of 8, and also the immediacy? Is that something that came out of your childhood, came out of experiences you had, or something that you knew that what I like to do is something where I see results quickly?
My dad is a results kind of oriented. My parents are very relational, both of them. But growing up, it was always work, being embodied, showing up, engaging with people. In terms of where the medicine came from, I don't know if that was just something I picked up, but I just remember saying it since grade school, junior high, high school, and then it kind of grew along the way. So that when we were in high school, we had the great fortune of having shadowing programs where I could go into the hospital, go into the ER. So I think it's one of those things where I'm not exactly sure where I picked that up, but I had said it so much that my life started to organize around that. My studies started to organize around that. And when I had opportunities for shadowing, my parents would say, "Oh, James wants to be a doctor." So I think being in that world, then the formation, and then people encouraging me, it just started to grow and grow and grow. So where that seed came from, I don't have an exact answer, but I do remember and always been told saying that since I was, a little boy, and it kind of grew and grew and grew.
You know what? I hope we'll get to explore some of this work in medicine itself. Although you've brought in and integrated a lot of things that on the surface could seem like outside of medicine, but you've already alluded to them, that are actually really part of your medical career. Many physicians find meaning in medicine, but over time also discover something outside of medicine that helps sustain them. For you, nature, travel, retreats seem to have become really an important part of that story. Um, so I'd like to spend a little time, if you could talk a little bit about how did wilderness medicine enter your life? What was it about being outdoors that captivated you? And in a way that hospitals and the emergency department cannot necessarily do that.
Yeah, as a family, we spent a lot of time outside and camping trips, and nature was always, and still to this day, just settles me, grounds me. My whole body just relaxes. But just as important to me is not only does it connect me to myself, where I feel embodied and calm, but that sense of awe and all my senses coming online. But whenever I've been in nature or on international trips in nature, it was always in community. So there's the theme of nature and grounding me, but also deep connections and interpersonal connections with other people. As a child, of course, I was with neighbors and people within our spiritual community and school systems and things like that. So as times around the fire, times cooking together, times just playing, exploring. And nature brings in that sense of relaxation and play in a very unique way. And it's also, of course, taught me a lot as I've grown in adulthood about my inner life and kind of the reality of people and nature, and has really become a great instructor to me on how to go about life.
Maybe you can talk a little bit about how nature fundamentally changed how you see your work in medicine. Is there maybe just kind of tie that together with us? And maybe it could be very abstract for all I know, but I'm sure there's a
So every year when I'm doing that, I would reflect on my vocational life, emotional, spiritual, social, financial life. And so I go through my vocational life all the time, at least once a year, and see what was going well. And it would always kind of remind me of what are my values within vocation? Where am I going off course? Where am I happy? What's going well? And what's causing friction? And so usually I would then look at the friction points and then try to job craft. Sometimes it was just a mindset. Okay, this is the system. This is how labs go. This is how imaging goes in terms of time coming back. And other times I would kind of, I remember this epiphany where I started to make work my spiritual practice. That was a game changer. I mean, changing my mindset of things in the ER that were challenging, um, that was tremendously helpful. Just accepting certain facts of what emergency medicine is. On the weekends, we're going to get more community members because offices are closed for primary care. So just accepting just the nature of emergency medicine, I would do every single year. But the things really pivoted when medicine started to become my spiritual practice, meaning the place where I can practice presence, emotional awareness, kindness, deep listening, effective, really good care. And so that has helped to settle a lot of my emergency medicine practice. Now, things have pivoted a little bit since then. I still try to maintain that, listen to understand, kindness, things along those lines. But nature, vocation, those reflective retreats gave me the space to be radically honest and compassionate with myself. And so when I'd be on walks, when I'd be on the desert and I'm thinking, there was no pressure to be anything else. There was no pressure. Nature gave me space to be honest with, this part's challenging. I'm not sure if this aligns with my skills and talents in this part, or I'm getting really frustrated and short with people with this, and that's not how I want to be. What can I do to change that? And nature accepted everything. There was there was spaciousness. So that's where nature became my teacher.
We had a couple episodes ago two guests who are really focused on bringing awe, AWE, into medicine. And I'm just wondering if you would share if there's a moment outdoors that was something that really inspired awe or was unexpectedly humbling or even hilarious that you could share.
I taught wilderness medicine for 8 years, and so we would do continuing medical education in places like Mount Everest base camp trekking or Kilimanjaro. And I have vivid memories of looking at the mountains, being with the group, and just being in total awe and humbled, by the vastness of everything. I can remember same on the Kilimanjaro hike and being in awe just of the mountains. And then we also did some safari, so just looking over some of the areas with crater and wild animals, and it really felt ancient and felt tied into the human story on a much, thousands of years of that grand scale. And one of the biggest moments, I took a sabbatical in New Zealand, and again, walking, hiking, thinking. There's a beautiful hike called Earnslaw Burn, and it's the most majestic scenery and hike I've been on in my entire life, where you come out of this couple hours of in the forest, and then you come out into this river, and then there's this glacier and 10, 15 waterfalls just coming out and green all around into the river. And I was in such awe and was humbled. It was almost like I was transported through this thin veil into this other. It honestly, it felt, it was blue sky and everything I described, and green grasses and the river crystal clear and waterfalls coming down. And it took my breath away. It still takes my breath away. If you can tell, just imagining it, it was awe and humility. And again, all those senses coming online. So nature has a way of putting me in awe just by the grandeur, splendor, the beauty. I love it. I still love it.
You're creating a longing for me just as you speak of it. And as I'm feeling into that longing, I'm thinking to myself, I think actually medicine, I'm wondering, it's a question. Medicine, maybe being in medicine creates a longing for nature. Maybe most of us aren't even in touch with that. What do you think of that idea?
It's funny. Yesterday in the ER, I've only been at this job a month, but we were going out to meet an emergent patient. And so I just stood outside the ER doors for the first time. And I was like, oh my goodness. I didn't realize there's no windows in my, I mean, I did realize there's no windows in the ER, where I'm at, but it creates a longing. And I always love when hospitals sometimes have skylights or have some sort of windows to the outside. So it's funny you say that, because yesterday I was just pondering. I'm glad for all the time I have, even now, to be in nature, because a lot of my day is no windows. So
I'm wondering, James, if we could just sort of transition a little bit. I'd like to get to a lot of different areas in the time that we have. One is Oasis, because I'd really like to hear about that. How did it come about and what you offer? And I also love for our listeners to be able to know about what you offer because it's really tremendous.
so Oasis Adventures came out of this 25 years of taking this yearly reflective retreat. It's probably one of the best spiritual practices or habits of the heart that I have. It's definitely a great orientation to my North Star, and it catches me when I'm going, as life does, a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, and it keeps me on track even if I'm kind of going back and forth. And it's been so instrumental and transformational to me to slow down, to reflect, to have spaces without judgment, and to do deep listening, and for radical honesty. That in my work I've done in the past, one on one, people have always said, wow, this is great. Thank you for providing space for me. And so I created Oasis Adventures to open this up. For this first couple of years, it's been for physicians, and later on, I'll probably open it up to anyone that's interested, because the work is really the work of becoming fully human and making sure we're sourcing who we are and our authentic self. So that's where that was born of wanting to share the joy, the goodness, the pleasure, and the grounding that this has provided for me. And then alongside of that, I offer coaching, whether it's on the retreat or before or after. Sometimes the coaching, some of the clients, because of scheduling, won't be able to come on a retreat. And the coaching is one more place to slow down and to attend to your own heart and depth, and helping create that space to let things emerge, to untangle. And that's become my biggest joy. That's where I find the deepest pleasure, is to accompany and let people see and be with things that there's not always space for, or that has a lot of energy and charge around it. So it's difficult to be with those things. And it really, seeing transformational change, seeing heart openings, new ways of relating to life. That's my career trajectory. That's where I'm heading for this second half of my career in life.
It may be obvious to our listeners, and I certainly make assumptions a lot of times, seems obvious to me, but it would be really nice to have you articulate how you realize that what had nourished you might also help others.
I, led retreats within, I worked with college students, and just seeing how they would kind of gather and they like being in community, and seeing those changes when we would just maybe walk with one or two or three students and talk about things. And people would always say, thank you so much for this. This was really great. Sometimes I go on trips with friends into nature, renting a cabin, going camping, and sometimes walking with a friend, and then talking about some of the deeper things of life. And people are like, wow, this is great. We have to do this more often. And I would just hear that time and time and time and time again. And so it'd be walking with people, being in nature, and people wanting more of that. Or I'd just share with people what I was doing, and they'd say, I would love to do something like that. And that was a constant refrain from almost everybody. So I started experimenting with that, leading some small retreats with just groups of friends, and they're like, "Oh wow, yeah, this is great," and that kind of gave me the courage to keep expanding that. And then even on the wilderness medicine trips, of course, usually I'm lecturing on wilderness medicine topics, hypothermia, high altitude medicine, but most of the day is spent walking and talking. And people would say, wow, I don't even talk to my own family like this, right? This is stuff I talk to with my counselor. And that's when I was seeing, okay, being in nature, talking with people, being a safe presence, this is what a lot of people are looking for, spaces like this. And I want to at least create that and offer that. And that's how then creating a retreat, coaching, and things like that have come about.
As you were talking now and earlier when you were describing your own annual pilgrimage, I could call it, back to yourself, because we waver on our path in life, and we like to keep that direction in mind. I was thinking about the word desire, which actually The etymology is of the stars, Deseri, of that we have a star in mind that we are moving toward, and it may not be a direct line. And in some ways, you're not telling people what their path is, but you're trying to give them that sense that there is this line in their life that they can follow, but they need some space and they need a little exposure to nature to help them, reintegrate that or rediscover that. For some people, it's really quite a transformation because they're rediscovering something that was deeply, deeply, deeply personal and meaningful to them. So I'm thinking about, if I was on your retreat, what are some of the ingredients that you bring in these retreats to make that possibility of transformation happen?
Oh, I was getting excited listening to you. I'm like, oh, I love that kind of work. I'm like, oh, okay, yes. Thanks for mirroring some of that back because that really like got on. I could feel myself like, wow, that sounds lovely. I want to do that. We always start each day of the retreat, and even in coaching, actually, with some grounding, some settling, arriving into this moment where we're at. And then with the coaching, creating some silence and space, and then saying, whatever it is you're wanting to explore today, this space is yours whenever you're ready. And then they'll kind of start. So we kind of start in that grounding, mindfulness, a little silence, permission to listen to the heart. And then we kind of go from there. And then I will accompany and follow them within the retreat when there's 12, 15 people. Each session also will start with some mindfulness, but then we will go into reflective questions for desires of the heart. And then sometimes an honest reality of where are we? And we'll do sometimes some dyads, meaning just with one other person, where you're talking about some of the answers to the reflective questions. I do something called rapid fire. I'll just give people 30 seconds to a minute. They can't think about it, and I ask them to respond with the immediacy of whatever comes up from their heart. So if the topic's physical life or emotional life, I'll ask questions in line with that. How is the relationship with friends or a significant other or a child? And that's just different. How much joy are we having in our life? How do we handle challenging emotions? And on, scale of 1 to 10, and something related to that topic. So by asking common rapid fire questions, doing some dyads, sometimes triads, so there's 3 people, we'll break people into small groups just to share. No commenting, no fixing from the other people, no advice giving. It's just that safe space where people can feel heard. So that posture of those things, reflective questions, non-fixing, non-advising, non-responsive, sharing in group, some reflective time, and then sometimes me sharing the heart posture, the openness and the invitation to explore this and to stay within an area of comfort so that they're not becoming too dysregulated if something's challenging. All of those ingredients together facilitate people exploring what they want, where they're at, and at a pace that feels comfortable to them. And so everyone's choosing where they want to be at. And then I'm always trying to just meet people where they're at.
Do you have a sense of what some of the questions that commonly come up? I know each of your participants are individuals, but are there some things that they're often carrying, whether they know it or not, with them into that? Or there's something that we can maybe not generalize, but think about, and especially for our listeners to think about, they can reflect as they listen to this conversation we're having on this for themselves.
Every health professional I've talked to is balancing life inside of medicine and life outside of medicine, and they affect each other. Every single person. And some of the stress points might show up in how we show up in presence in medicine. And sometimes the stresses of medicine will show up in how we show up and presence ourselves, our being, outside of medicine within other relationships. So that topic, whether it's with a partner, a child, family members, is always coming up of how do I be a great group member at work, but not at the cost and expense of, losing important things that are important to me and my family? How do I be a great person within my important relationships without overly, now here's where this gets challenging, with being a good, colleague, and then letting people explore what does that mean to them? What does that look like? How many committees, so to speak, is enough? How much extra, is enough? And letting people wrestle with that and figure out for them what feels right. So that's a common, universal for everyone. And then we just leave space to explore what's the pinpoint specificity for this particular person. And what are they then wanting? What are the tensions? How do we explore this and create space just for exploration?
I really appreciated that you used the word, let me see if I can remember it, their life inside of medicine and outside of medicine. One of the things that irritates me endlessly is this the use of language work-life balance, as if work is not life. And work, we know, is a big part of our lives, right? I mean, we sacrifice for it. It's a vocation, so we really want to do it, hopefully in the best of circumstances. So this travel and these retreats as a pathway to well-being, this is really interesting and very unique. Although it's been around things like that for some time, what you offer is extremely unique. Not in this conversation, but I've heard you speak about the setting matters less than the intention. Maybe you can share more about what you mean by that.
Yeah, that is so important because even though I like nature and I like beautiful places, it's really the intention and the heart that we bring to these conversations. And over Zoom, or if I'm coaching, sometimes I go on a walk while someone could be in another state, and we have the exact same, I mean, equal heart connection, conversation, and transformation, which is really what's the most important thing. All of this nature and setting is just decreasing stress. So the intention of showing up, even if it's over the phone, and I've had people that are on break and in their offices that are talking, it's exactly the same. Now, is it more fun to be on a beach and go swimming and explore stuff? And yeah, yeah. but but that honestly, those are secondary, tertiary, or almost. Those are the carrots to get people to say, "Oh, I don't want to do that kind of work. That sounds, oh my gosh, I don't want to." So those are some of honestly the things that entice people. And then when they get there and they settle and they see what we're doing, it makes sense, and they see it's not a pressure. They can enter as much or as little as they want with doing this work, but it truly is the intention that someone brings to this and that I bring to it. And it can happen anywhere. Happen in a living room, happen on the back porch, happen in an office on a lunch break. And that's meaningful to me, knowing that we don't have to be anywhere else, but we're cultivating this inner world and this inner life that we can bring anywhere, to anyone at any time. That's the heart of the work.
Yes, I think there's one other element that you're not stating, but I know you buy into it, and I'll name it here and just to get your sense of that. We spend a lot of our time in medicine doing our work as the expert, and we often you come to our trainings, and we often will quote one of the Zen quotes that says, "In the beginner's mind, the possibilities are endless. in the expert's mind, the possibilities are few. So when you bring a health professional physician to a new setting of any kind, and of course we could incline our mind, any new moment is a new setting in a certain way, as you described, but especially with travel, suddenly you're allowed to not be the expert. You're in this brand new environment where the possibilities are endless. And I just want you to maybe hear your reflections about that.
Well, I mean, I'm a huge believer in that. And, behind the scenes, I go to all the places I'm thinking of doing a retreat at. I look at, is the food nourishing? Are the rooms comfortable? So that you can open externally with fun and awe and joy and play, because that is some of the gateways that opens the inner heart and the inner life and that allows for that. So I'm a big believer in travel environments, and I'm trying to create a setting of concentric circles where you can relax and open, relax and open, relax and open. Comfort is just something, when you're not worried about comfort, that lets you relax and open. Beauty, when you're not worried about like, is something that lets you relax and open. And none of those other things are bad. I'm trying to leverage everything I know about people and myself to how can we accelerate the work, support the work, and make it as fruitful, because professionals' times to get away, is a very precious commodity, and I'm very aware of that. And that's why I'm using travel as a tool, beauty as a tool, resorts as a tool to accelerate and relax people's nervous system as quickly as I can. And everything we do on a retreat is about making people feel safe, comfortable, put them in that fun, playful kind of space so that the heart can open and do this work.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, you're creating the conditions so that they can ask questions and deeply listen to the answers. I know you spent years studying transformational presence and deep listening. Maybe because you've become a personal expert on for your personal life on that, what tends to get in the way for yourself, but also with our patients and the work we do, and with just one another, with our close relationship?
It's something that's a continual growth process. No matter how deep you go or how far you grow, there's always an edge that you're growing, and there's always a depth that you're growing into. And so I laugh and smile just because at every phase I'm like, okay, this is great. It always just keeps growing. The main thing for me that gets in the way is judgment. It's always that's a big barrier. And so I catch myself. And one of the things that changed my practice in medicine, I'll feel my body getting tight. I've asked a question in the ER and someone's be like 30 years ago, and my body gets tight. And so when I notice that, if I'm starting to judge, I say to myself, and this phrase relaxes me immediately, is listen to understand. So that one phrase, listen to understand, takes me out of judgment, and it opens me to what are they trying to communicate? How can I reflect back the essence of that? And so I'll give them then that minute and a half, 2 minutes to wherever they want to go. And then I'll try to reflect back the main thread back. So I think judgment gets in the way for me of pressures of a system, of course, and time management and prioritizing things can get in the way of causing me to forget, other things that are important, of presencing, being patient, things like that if I'm trying to meet a metric or, be efficient. So judgment, the systems, and just the pressures of the metrics of what needs to be done and the time constraints it needs to be done in. I think those are two big ones. And then this is something we need, but can bring blockage. Is like you said, when we're the expert, that's good in medicine. If I become too rigid in a way of being that's not fluid and has some flexibility, that can also get in the way. So I think those are some of the big ones for me. So always having a practice then to counterbalance that. No, first noticing it when I do get in that track every day and saying, listen to understand. That really, it's a North Star. It's gentle. It's directive. It's also catching me. It's pointing me into the heart posture that I want to be doing. So it's very instructive.
Yeah, I mean, I think to the extent that we could bring awareness to the tendency to listen with the intent to respond and shift that to listen with the intent to understand, that changes the game in all our relationships, whether it's work, personal, our relationship with ourselves. Um, the context of this conversation is what I just learned was after several years in Tennessee, you are now just 6 weeks or so in the Pacific Northwest. Um, so, given that that's a geographic, to me, a big move, what are you currently learning about yourself?
I am living in nature right now, and I'm reminded, and I was in downtown Nashville for 2 years doing academic emergency medicine. It was actually the highlight of my whole career was teaching and working with residents and teaching residents all this. That was a dream come true. And now coming, I spent my first 16 years in the Pacific Northwest of my career. So coming back to do hopefully coaching at an institutional level, I'm just learning how important these practices are for me. So before this podcast, I did go on a walk in the trees. It's right outside my door. I do still do reflective writing every day. I think I'm reminded of just how important is everything that I share. It's not intellectual primarily, it's not theoretical primarily. These are embodied practices, and I do best with these embodied ways of being with family, of being in nature, of being at work, no matter what I'm doing. And so it's more of a remembering that this stuff is nourishing, and it's not really, oh, this is optional or this is a great idea or things like that. They're necessary for my way of being, and it will show up in every single relationship when I'm not tending to these things. Like, oh, it's a good idea to go on a walk. It's a good idea to reflect. It's a good idea to fill in the blank. Well, for me, it's actually a part of me being able to show up in a more thoughtful, grounded way. Because I've had seasons, especially with just moving here and finding a place and then moving into a new place, starting a new job. And sometimes in busy seasons, those things take a little bit of a break, or I'm not doing quite as much. And I can see the effects of that. So I'm reminded and continue to learn. Nope, I am practicing and doing what I speak about, and then I've been I've been a little bit too gracious or patient. I was going to give myself, when I start a new job, I'll give myself 2 or 3 months to get up to speed, a new computer system, new colleagues, new. So I've had to get up to speed a little quicker. So in 3 or 4 shifts, people are like, "Hey, how you doing? You up to speed yet?" I'm like, yes, yes, one more shift. I'm up to speed. So I am learning. I'm learning all these things about myself, and it's fun.
So, I'm going to be winding down our conversation, but I just thought, because you mentioned it, this rapid fire, I'm going to give you some rapid fire. And what I'd like you to do, I don't know exactly how you do it on your retreats, but I don't want you to think too much and just top of mind. So I'm going to say a couple things that I've been thinking about since we've been talking. So I'll say a couple words and then you just give what's top of mind. Okay. Mountains, ocean, or desert?
Mountains.
Favorite place you've ever visited?
New Zealand, Ernst Law Burn.
Sunrise or sunset?
Sunset.
Best trail snack?
Ooh, chocolate trail mix.
One thing you never travel without?
Oh, that's a good one. A snack, food.
Most important lesson nature has taught you.
Non-judgment, everything belongs.
Okay, great. Most most overrated wellness advice.
Oh gosh. That's a tough one. Most overrated wellness advice. Oh, I know. This is when people just say "let go." There's truth in that, but sometimes it irks me if something's really complicated in someone's life.
Very good, very good. All right, and one place that still is on your bucket list.
Japan.
So I have just a closing question. If you could prescribe one wilderness practice for physicians everywhere, what would that be?
Just take a 10-minute walk in nature. That can be enough to just restore. And that would be my number one tip. And then if you can expand that, even if it's honestly 5 minutes in nature, that can be enough to sometimes create a reset. Uh, yeah, I think everyone would benefit, from that.
I am going to do just that when we're done with this interview. Anything else you'd like to share with our listeners, James?
The only last thing I would say is that to everyone is you have permission to live the fullness of your own life. You have permission to follow your desires. You have permission. And I just want to encourage everyone to take the time and the space to do whatever needs to be done so that you feel like you're being fully you.
So very true and wise advice. Thank you so much, James.
Thank you, Mick. What a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening. We will include a summary of today's podcast and some links to Dr. Juarez and other related notes in the show notes. I'd like to conclude again by sharing another practical exercise to help you flourish. This time, I'd like you to take a few moments just to sit or stand comfortably near a window, wherever you are, with your eyes open. You may have to go find a window. This could be day, it could be night. Looking out the window into the outdoor environment, wherever that is, and whatever's there. A cityscape, a yard, a street, whatever it is that you see through the window, and just taking in the visual experience. Until this moment, you may wonder, have you ever taken the time to simply notice what's out there through the window? What's here, actually? And perfectly normal to notice the thoughts, the judgments, the critiques, the analyses, which may be part of your experience. That's normal. No need to kind of push them away. It's not a problem. Especially with the invitation to just be with whatever arises, whatever thoughts you're having, whatever sensations in the body may be there, whatever feelings are there, such as like, dislike, nice, unpleasant, whatever it is. There's no objective or goal to change anything, only to open up to the environment and to whatever arises for you. Is it possible to see what your eyes are taking in as if it were for the first time? With curiosity, a sense of adventure even, a sense of engaging in the unknown. I hope you found this podcast and this brief reflective practice useful to you, and look forward to having you join us for the next episode of Flourishing in Medicine, from Surviving to Thriving. To learn more about EmPro, please visit www.myempro.com. If you'd like to know more about EmPro's peer support programs, www.myempro.com/peer-support. And if you're a physician in need of urgent support, please consider calling the Physician Support Line at 1-888-409-0141 or visiting www.physiciansupportline.com. For information about attending a Flourishing in Medicine workshop, where you can receive up to 25 hours of CME credit, please visit www.mindfulpracticeinmedicine.com. Hope to see you next time.